So, sometimes in your releases you can show pictures of your technical sort of providers looking over maps as we've got there. So, the next step is basically conducting an initial geological and technical data review. There's data that the company owns and is aware of that's held in sort of databases and reports. Sometimes these databases can be complex and difficult to extract data without the right sort of software keys. There's also data that may exist in other areas that the company is perhaps unaware of, such as in historic mines department databases, geochemical, geophysical and ESG related information. So we start to look at what is the quality of this historic sort of data and how it can be sort of used and enhanced. And it's my belief that historical data is perhaps not an issue as people believe. It's all about the basis of the verification and how the geological information can be applied. For example, we've just come from a project where they had some old sort of drilling and sort of had old sort of drill holes in chip trays, yet had no assay information associated with it. So we went and looked at the geological information in the chip trays, related that to some of their sort of newer drilling, and suddenly they had an exploration target that was a lot sort of larger than what they'd anticipated. So yeah, always sort of look at the historic data and ways that you can verify it. We also sort of recommend that companies start to put their own sort of company stamp on the reliability and confidence of the data by signing off sort of currently according to a code. Too often we see perhaps references to historic sign-off from many, many years ago. The standard disclaimer that the directors aren't aware of any change. We believe that current sign-off shows sort of currency and review of data, where disclaimers can show a lack of relationship to that data and also suggest a lack of technical sort of staff. So one of the most important things is going to site initially. Getting those boots on the ground is the most important sort of aspect. Get there and don't use the site visits as just a CP sort of checkbox with limited duration. Make use of the consultant's sort of technical skills, have them on your side. And also consider the various stages of exploration development that you're at, any gaps in prospectivity where you can collect sort of further data to help you develop an exploration target. Data collection is the key. So just on sort of reporting exploration targets, we're definitely seeing an uptake in requests from these sort of juniors to provide an exploration target for release to the market. Historically, perhaps there's been very minimal reporting of the targets in detail, and as we've discussed, the potential investor is now technically informed, so an increased level of technical consent and transparency to support the exploration targets required. Display your depth of understanding by not just using arrows on your target in three directions and open arrow at depth in a picture. Perhaps construct a more informed sort of model of the potential mineralisation, showing the different sort of geology and football and hanging wall or any sort of local offsets or faults or shear zones. Qualitatively describe the mineralisation style, and for a very refined approach, complete a basic geological resource sort of model. Obviously include any additional data such as surface mapping or geophysical information. Perhaps just a bit of a note that for exploration targets for ASX release, obviously you've got to include a competent person statement if you're using additional mineralisation drill results with accompanied sort of JORC Table 1. Any cautionary statements also required as to the potential quality and sort of grade. A comment on the proposed exploration activities is also required, and the comment also on the time frame when those activities are to be completed. Also, tonnage and grade can't be reported as a headline sort of statement. Just on prospectivity and sort of relaying that to the investors, I think the old adage of the easy stuff is now gone sort of perhaps rings true. Simon Hanrahan, who from SRK, spoke last year on the complexity with mining styles. So we also need to think outside the box now for prospectivity and show that there is sort of deposits that are concealed and deeper, and that your exploration models need to be more conceptual and knowledge-driven, sometimes opposed to data-driven, and more use of geophysics to make initial sort of discoveries. So enhancing sort of prospectivity, we can look at various sort of examples sort of here: metallurgy, ESG advantages, emitting advantages, favourable product demand, etc. So after completing all of that, we also get asked to look at sort of valuation of the assets. And so completing an exploration target or inferred mineral resource or better will result in sort of enhanced valuation of your asset, but may faces sort of few challenges, but it's most important to understand the drivers of your valuation. So drivers include classification, mutability of the host units, tenement area, metallurgy, what was the cost of acquirement, etc. So if you consider all of those, SRK actually now uses a bit of a scorecard where no JORC reporting has occurred, and getting a formalised exploration target results in the scorecard going a lot higher. So here's a bit of an example of the scorecard, and getting that exploration target in really pushes the valuation of your project along remarkably. Just a couple of sort of closing remarks. Really a refined approach to reporting exploration targets will definitely better inform the investor and result in improved confidence for all. Investors aren't sort of technically uninformed these days. There's increased technical understandings in the investing community, so make your releases readable, but still include a lot of detail on the technical and geological understanding. And the importance in the valuation, improved valuation for your project by doing an exploration target or better and using that refined geological and technical information. So just thanks everybody for today. We're actually in the booth just near the entrance to the auditorium, and we can have a chat there, or look forward to having a chat with you over a drink at the SRK sort of sponsored event at the Ball and Chain from 4:15 p.m. Thank you very much. Cheers.
Tom Sanders is a geologist with over 35 years' experience in exploration, mining and corporate development in Western Australia. He's got published papers in the Nepean nickel deposit, the Mount Martin gold deposit, and on regional mineralisation studies in the East Kimberley. Tom founded Breaker Resources NL in 2010, and he joins us now with the story of the progress that it is making. Welcome along, Tom.
Thanks very much, Jerry, and thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen, for your time today. Just by way of background, Breaker was set up to find large new gold systems in WA's eastern goldfields that are concealed by transported cover. In 2016, I presented here and said, well, guys, it looks like we've got a discovery. What we've now got is a large gold deposit in a large gold system that's still growing. That's how long it takes. We're testing a 9-kilometre area. I'll break this presentation down into 2 parts, give you an overview in about half a dozen slides, and then show you why I think this is going to be a mine. And why that's important is our EV per resource ounce is currently about $30. If I can show you this is going to be a mine today, it should triple that. So what I want to do today is tell you a story, give you some perspective, and show you why I think you should back up the truck, buy as many as you can, and put them in the bottom drawer. Our key project is 100 kilometres east of Kalgoorlie. It's big, it's concealed, and it's totally virgin, and it's situated between 2 operating mines. We've had 2 to 3 rigs running continuously over the last 6 or 7 years, kicking goals, adding ounces. We've spent $60-odd million, and for every $40, we've added an ounce of gold. So that's over a 6-year period. Our strategy, our objective is to create a large mine, but we're within a large system, so the sensible thing to do is get a high margin mine going while we continue to expand the system. Our initial focus, because this is a concealed system, is to understand what we're dealing with and to set up an early production option. Now, we've plastered a 4-kilometre zone, which is essentially three separate discoveries that have merged, establish a high confidence open pit resource that we understand. And now we've taken that understanding and extended it underground, and we're hitting high-grade stuff that will translate into an underground mine to complement the existing open pit option. In the last year, we've had some transformational results that tell me this is going to be a mine. But those deeper holes are still on a wide spacing, but they're on kilometric scale structures that we understand very well and that are open in all directions. We have substantial non-core assets. We discovered a lithium deposit within our Lake Roe gold project in 2018. We recently did a deal with Global Lithium. We maintain a 20% interest that is free carried through to production, and we hold about 6 to 7% of that company. Now, if Global Lithium don't complete a BFS within 5 years, it goes back to 50-50. So that's on top of the initial value proposition I mentioned. Then we have another, what I think is a highly interesting gold-copper system that's hardly touched, that we pegged in 2014 and is now part of the emerging mineral district in the southwest Yilgarn. We've been kicking goals for 6 years, but keep in mind this is a big system that doesn't stick out of the ground. So the first thing you want to do is, do I have a mine? So you drill some holes, get some hits, and the next decision is, well, I've got 9 kilometres. Where am I going to focus my drilling to work up that early production option? So your initial part post-discovery, post-2016 to 2017, is simply working out on this large system where you're going to have your early production option. Once we decided in 2017, we hammered it, and we're still hammering it. We've added and de-risked the open pit production option. And now, in the last year, we've put out 2 resource updates, and it's very clear that with high grade on large-scale continuous structures, that you can have an underground mine beneath the open pit. The board, I won't labour this one, but I think essentially you have a lot of high calibre professionals here that know their stuff and have been kicking goals for a long time. Peter Cook recently joined the board, a long and illustrious career in mining and other things, but I don't think Peter would have got involved if he didn't think this is going to be a mine. Corporate overview. I've stated our objective, and that is to establish a large mine. We're well funded. We've got 26 million in cash and investments, primarily the Global Lithium investment. So we don't have to raise money for a substantial time. The EV per ounce is $34. In the market, if you put that against your peers, it says to me that, well, the market thinks you've got a sub-economic resource, Tom. What are you doing? So I'll show you a few slides, again, to reinforce the notion and belief that this is going to be a mine. There are several upcoming catalysts, preliminary mining studies. Okay, the open pit's easy. You throw a whittle at it. There's your result. The underground planning, preliminary planning, is quite easy too, so long as you have high grade and you have continuity. Now we're seeing that, but what we don't have yet is enough drill spacing on the deeper holes. For the last year and a half, we've been putting in deep holes. We've been generating ounces, not at $40 in the last resource, but at $20. That's a result of understanding the system. But our drill hole spacing, because we've got such a large footprint, is still 80 metres at best. So what we'll do while we're conducting our preliminary mining studies is hammer the high grade. And by doing so, I expect to get more ounces and more grade in the resource. The problem with inferred resources on a wide drill spacing as we have is that it's hard to be confident on the grade, because most geologists, taking a conservative view, are saying, well, you've got a wide spacing. So I think by infilling those areas of high grade, we're going to see more gold at a higher grade while we increase the confidence of that underground resource. I expect a resource update the latter part of this year. The reason I'm not firmer on that time frame is we're looking to ramp up our drilling up. So we're scaling up our manpower, we're scaling up the rigs. And in this environment, it's hard, but it's a process we've started and we're going to do. We have a free carried interest in the lithium exposure. Global Lithium are going to get on the ground to, I believe, expand that resource and find more. You'll see some very substantial American institutions on board. That's unusual. Okay, a quick fly through why I think this is going to be a mine. This is courtesy of Wally Witt, this slide, but it essentially puts the larger gold deposits around Kalgoorlie in a perspective that I think rings true in a lot of ways. They're essentially on the margins of a big rift where you have a deep mantle connection, basically highlighted by the presence of rocks like cyanite, lamprey and the like. We've got those. So it's a place where you expect to find a significant gold deposit. And we're seeing those mantle rocks over the full 9 kilometres of our gold system. We're situated between two converging shear zones between two operating mines. What that means is that we have a standalone option and we have a low capex trucking option. Mills tend to be hungry the larger they are. So I think that this is a good strategic area. I think that could be of interest to others, but again, our view is on establishing a higher grade margin mine. This is what it looks like. You're looking at a 9-kilometre gold system. On the left, there's not much sticking out of the ground, but the mineralised zone there that the initial pit will target is 150, 200 metres wide. Fantastic. The drill holes you see on the right are RC and diamond holes, colour-coded by max downhole gold. They're sitting on an air core image shown in orange in the background. So what you're seeing there is you can see the main deposit, main Bomboro deposit, 1.5 million ounces. It's our initial area of focus within a gold system that's still growing. Interestingly, the structures that we are seeing in the dolerite, we can now project into the edge of the cyanide, which is magnetite rich and competent, great for pulling gold out. So I'm expecting further discovery. But this process takes time. So Bomboro is part of a 9-kilometre gold system. It has satellite gold deposits along strike, and we understand it. It has taken on 300,000 metres of drilling to do that, but that has been cost-effective drilling, $40 an ounce on average, and more recently, getting cheaper. This is a look side on at the main Bomboro deposit. You're looking at 4 kilometres. The Sydney Harbour Bridge there is about 500 metres long. The flat south plunging structures are your steep lodes. The north plunging structures, and the steep lodes, you've got about 10 of them, one on top of the other. When they hit the upper part of an iron-rich dolerite, a la Golden Mile, a la St Ives, Paddington, the gold drops out. And it does it in a systematic way. Where those steep structures lock up, you get your flat structures and your west dipping structures. So this is big. We're getting good grade near surface, high grade near surface, and high grade at depth. It's going to be a mine. This is what our structures and our mineralisation looks modelled up in the context of the drilling. It is limited by the extent of the drilling. I won't go into the details of the drill pattern there, it's all spelled out. I do have a subset of the resource at cut-off grades that probably common when in a standalone situation. So again, most practitioners looking at that will say, yeah, it's going to be a mine. It's not priced in the share price yet, but it'll come. Cross-section. This is a strata-bound deposit. What that means is when these structures hit the upper iron-rich part of the dolerite, the gold drops out. High ounces per vertical metre. These structures are stacked one on top of the other over a wide zone. That equals low strip ratio. If you look at that cross-section, a simple observation is where the steep structures shown in red are, or where they're not, well, let me put it another way, where they're not, you get the flats and the west dipping starting to dominate. It's a consistent, well-behaved system. This is some of the high-grade golds in the deep flat lodes that we've been hitting in the last year and a half. Good high grade over long distance equals mineability underground. The same applies on the steep lodes. The drill spacings you're seeing there are 80 metres apart. And I've got that Penny North resource in there purely as a perspective, but it's shown at the same scale as the map on the left. Non-core lithium, which I won't go into, which you'll be able to read at your leisure. Non-core gold-copper system, which you can read in your leisure given the time constraint. So it's an emerging district, proven management, well-funded, with a strong register. It's a future mine priced as a sub-economic resource, and that is a low-risk investment currently that can add multiples. $30 is sub-economic resource. $100 is an okay resource in the current market, as you can see, but can be well north of that, and therefore several multiples on where the share price is currently. Upcoming catalysts, as you can see there. Thank you very much for your time.
Just before I announce our next speaker, a set of keys belonging to a Mercedes has been found at reception. Don't all leave at once. Ardea Resources is a Western Australian-focused company with a clear strategy to become an integrated ethical feedstock supplier to the lithium-ion battery sector through the development of Australia's largest nickel and cobalt mineral resource, the Kalgoorlie Nickel Project. The company also has a track record of exploration success with the recent Emu Lake nickel sulfide discovery. To tell us more, we welcome Managing Director Andrew Penkethman. Andrew, welcome along.
Thanks very much, Jerry, and welcome to everyone today, and congratulations to the Vertical Events team for another very successful event. I'll just give you an update on Ardea Resources today and our flagship Kalgoorlie Nickel Project. And over the last 3 years, it's been about clearing the decks, consolidating the company so that we're a purely focused nickel cobalt play, advancing our KMP towards production. Disclaimer, take it as read. So we're all acutely aware of the move to a low carbon future, and in response to that, we're starting to see the nickel price at around 10-year highs, rapidly declining warehouse stockpiles, similar thematic for cobalt. So there's never been a better time to be in nickel. There's never been an electric vehicle revolution. If you add it into the mix, the global governments, central banks around the world, they've never had higher asset bases, and that money printing continues. There's never been easier access to significant capital to develop globally significant projects like Ardea's Kalgoorlie Nickel Project, starting with our Goongarrie hub. We've got access to export credit agency funding within Australia and similarly with our traditional global trading partners, and that's been re-emphasised with COVID and concerns about supply chain security. A little bit trigger happy. Just in terms of the overview for Ardea, we're completely focused on nickel and cobalt. Number of transactions over the last 3 years. We're not a producer or a dividend player just yet, but project consolidation and in-specie share distribution helps reward our very loyal shareholder base. We're seeing market strength. All of our projects are located here in the great state of Western Australia. That's a deliberate strategy. We've got the best-in-class laterite deposits in Australia. We've enhanced our flow sheet, working with industry leaders, and we ensure consistent news flow and a reputation of doing what we say we will. I'll go on and say a little bit more about a recent nickel sulfide discovery. Ardea have one of the largest land holdings in the eastern goldfields covering ultramafic stratigraphy. It's those same ultramafic rocks that host nickel sulfide deposits. And we've been working away on Emu Lake now for about 2 years, working with New Exco and our in-house geological team, and we've put together a terrific geological model and got proof of concept. So if we look at our Kalgoorlie project, just 70 kilometres northeast of Perth, we'll see there's an eastern and a western belt. The eastern belt hosts our laterite resources, and that's why this discovery was able to be made on granted mining leases. So on the western belt, we've got multiple komatiite flows identified. All the geochemical indicators are lighting up. Nickel, chrome, arsenic, magnesium, sulphur, etc. So we know these deposits never occur in isolation, and we're incredibly bullish that with further exploration we've got an emerging nickel sulphide camp because we control 20 kilometres of prospective strike on that western belt. A little bit more detail now about the discovery. So if you look at the core on the bottom, you'll see the black material here. That's our felsic footwall. And you see the squibbly sulfides in there. That's really important. That's what's called thermal erosion, and that tells us that these sulfides are in situ. These rocks are 2.7 billion years old. They've had a hard life, so there's opportunities for nickel sulfides to be remobilised. In this case, we know they're intact, and those same thermal erosion textures are exactly what you see at the Silver Swan deposit owned by Poseidon, 35 kilometres to our west. Very high grade nickel sulfides, grades in excess of 8%, and that discovery zone assayed just under 3 metres at 5.4% nickel, with copper and PGE and cobalt credits expected from any future production. We've got a lot of work to do in terms of defining resources and reserves, but as I mentioned earlier, these Cambalda style nickel sulphide systems, they never occur in isolations. You know, we look at the multiple mines and deposits around Cambalda, similarly Leinster and all the other great nickel sulphide areas around this great state. 3D model there, it indicates that our geological model is hanging together. So not only have we got 20 kilometres of prospective strike in that western komatiite belt, there's multiple potentially mineralised surfaces. So all three of those komatiite flows shown in that figure are prospective. We had historic exploration on the Binti Gossan area because it cropped out its surface. It was an obvious target. But none of those holes drilled far enough west to test the westernmost flow where we've made our most recent discovery. So we're going to be following up with deep diamond drilling, downhole EM surveys, cleaning out some of the legacy holes and doing modern high-powered downhole EM surveys, because you've got to remember that downhole EM technology's improved significantly over the last 15 years since there was last meaningful exploration here for sulfides. And of course, historic explorers completely missed the westernmost flow, and there's still 20 kilometres of strike that we can chase. A little bit more now about the nickel market and our flagship Kalgoorlie Nickel Project Goongarrie Hub. This figure just says everything we need to know about the rapidly increasing demand for nickel supply, and we look at what's currently happening in the lithium space. There's no shortage of lithium resources in the world, but there's an acute shortage of short-term production capacity. With nickel, there's an acute shortage of resources, and there will be ongoing strains to future production capacity. So that's why we're so bullish about the future. And we need jurisdictions like Australia and Canada to guarantee ethical and sustainable mineral supply. We're running a strategic partner process in the background. Interest has never been stronger. Most importantly, a number of the key companies we talk to, they're not going to go to jurisdictions like Indonesia or the Philippines. They're concerned about deep sea tailings disposal, high rainfall. How do you successfully have valley fill tailings disposal, habitat destruction, and also their tectonically seismic active areas. So anyone seriously considering ethical and sustainable mineral supply can't go there. The Indonesians will continue to increase supply, but that alone just simply isn't enough to meet future demand. Our location, we're all very familiar with WA, of course, but in red we see our K&P tenements, and just 70 kilometres to the northwest of the mining capital of Australia, Kalgoorlie, we've got our Goongarrie Hub, and that's the focus of our first production hub. We also maintain a local office and have outstanding community support from the City of Kalgoorlie-Boulder and Shire of Menzies. And importantly, we've got existing infrastructure. So we've got the road and rail network passing through our granted Goongarrie mining leases upon which the resources are located, and direct links to the deep sea port of Esperance on the south coast, and of course the Kwinana and the developing Kwinana battery hub just south of Perth. Bit more detail now on the resource as we zoom into Goongarrie, and over the course of the last 12 months we've undertaken 2 resource updates, and we're continuing to review and update our resources within the KMP. But you can see within that 5.9 million tonnes of contained nickel within the KMP, we've got this high-grade core just at Goongarrie of 78 million tonnes of 1% nickel and very high-grade cobalt as well. That'll be the feeder as part of our DFS, and we'll be updating our reserves in the second half of this year, and I look forward to that. But that resource gives you a feel for our expectation of the feed grades. And importantly, we've increased the project scale from 2.25 to 3.5 million tonnes per annum, and that's in response to feedback from the strategic partner process. They want as much nickel and cobalt supply as possible. A little bit more now on the resource, and within the last 2 weeks the Geological Survey of Western Australia has come out with a nickel cobalt investment summary and independently rated Ardea's KMP as the largest resource in the state and by default the largest in Australia. This is a globally significant asset. These types of super large deposits, they're incredibly rare. A little bit more now about the key things that make our Goongarrie deposit the best in class. So if we look at the drill core here, that's what we call the beautiful goethite mineralisation. Soft, crumbly, iron-rich, it can be mined and put into the autoclave the same day. Some of the other clay-dominated laterites have to be mined, aged for several hundred days before being processed. We've got none of those double handling issues at Goongarrie. The middle photos, the mixed hydroxide precipitate, that's going to be our initial base case, but we're also evaluating the production of precursor cathode active material later this year as well. And of course, it's the MHP that feeds into the lithium-ion batteries, and all the large cathode manufacturers want MHP because they can customise it to their specific battery chemistry. In terms of our flow sheet, that's the figure on the far right, and we've enhanced that significantly. We've now got 2 1.5 million tonne per annum autoclaves and also an atmospheric leach circuit. The benefits of the atmospheric leach circuit are significant. They enable us to be off-grid and generate our own power from the excess heat. That excess heat helps heat up the whole process side and minimises our OPEX. The excess steam drives steam turbines and generates our power off-grid. And that's what gives us this industry-leading low CO2 emissions, and will be continue to reduce the CO2 emissions with the ongoing DFS work. And if you compare that to Glencore's operating Murrin project, we're significantly lower, and if you look at the coal-fired projects in Indonesia, we're about a quarter of their emissions. So again, if you want ethical and sustainable mineral supply, you can't go to Indonesia. Everything we are going to implement with the project development, it's tried and true and successfully employed at existing operations. Here at Coral Bay, we saw them ramp up 2 autoclaves to over 100% of nameplate capacity in under 12 months of operation, and that's exactly the success we're going to emulate at Goongarrie. In terms of the DFS, we're working with industry-leading partners such as Wood Engineers, and I've done a lot of work with them in the past, working on a 15 million tonne per annum hydrometallurgical project in the Namib Northlift National Park within Namibia. We were able to get it done there. We needed an acid plant. We needed to consider desalinated water, and it's a much, much larger project than this. We've got the team with the experience to do it. We'll need to continue to grow as a company, but everyone within the team makes a very valuable contribution and they have the relevant experience. We also work with industry leaders like CSIRO and the Future Battery Industry Cooperative Research Centre. In terms of the timing, we're working hard to complete the DFS this calendar year, and we're also undergoing test work at the moment at ALS. We'll be saying a lot more about the results there. They'll lock in our flow sheet. They'll also look at the scandium and rare earth production potential. We don't need them to have an incredibly viable project like several of our peers depend on scandium for their financial metrics. We don't include it currently, but it's another potential valuable byproduct credit. In terms of ESG, we are an employer of choice. We've got a fantastic team, and it's all about working with respect, empathy, and being inclusive. We really do have the best team, and we're not a producer just yet, but we do a lot of heavy lifting. We've got a Eastern Goldfields of WA education fund for local Indigenous students, and we're currently helping a young man called Noah Hinckley realise his basketball college dream in the United States. So just in closing, we do have a globally significant resource that will play a critical role in the battery revolution. We're in the best operating jurisdiction in the world. We retain 100% of our offtake. We haven't given it away like many of our peers. When we do announce a partner, it will be strategic and meaningful for the company. We do have a very significant land holding here in the Eastern Goldfields, and we've demonstrated the prospectivity of that with the recent Emu Lake nickel sulfide discovery. We've got a local team, terrific people to work with, and we continue to do what we say we will, and we've got a very progressive year planned ahead. So look, thanks for your attention. Look, come and see us, booth 6. Alex and Mike are there. They've been doing a great job on the booth, and we're more than happy to take any questions. Thank you.
A recorded presentation now as we welcome JP Varga De La Vega. JP is a Chilean-Australian mineral industry professional with 18 years broad experience in ASX mining companies, stockbroking and private equity firms. He's been a specialist lithium analyst in Australia. He's also operated a private copper business in Chile, and has also worked for BHP, Rio Tinto and Codelco. JP's presentation follows.
Good afternoon, Perth. Well, I can't make it this year, but thank you for attending the RIU. I am JP Varga De La Vega. I'm the Managing Director of Galan Lithium. I'm currently recording this tape from Catamarca, Argentina. Well, it's been quite a journey the last 4 years, and ever since I started going to RIU, the company's been going from milestone to milestone. So I would like to give you a little update and show you where we're at and where we're going. And with that said, you can see now where a little presentation. So Galan is a company that's always been about being high-grade, low impurities. And we have proven this, and I'll show you the next chart about where that sits. Interestingly enough, the lithium triangle in Argentina have seen quite a few numbers of transactions late last year with Orocobre merger with Galaxy, now it's Allchem, Millennial, Neolithium. So there's a lot of things been happening. Importantly, we have strong support by companies like Thematica, and we have a strong also held position by management. And we have enough cash now to go forward and develop all the studies at Ombra Muerto West as well as Candela. So this is important for you guys to realize that Galan now is sitting at a very different level. We have 2 projects. We're developing Ombra Muerto West first into a DFS, but the combined value of the two studies that we released last year, it's around $3.4 billion. So this is something that to remember. And this has been done at a price estimate of around $18,500 long-term pricing. The current spot price sits well above $60,000. So, and this is potentially the beginning of where the lithium shortage is looking, and the market will adjust accordingly to deliver all these cars, and the projects are going to go forward. So we believe that we are well placed in a mature project now with enough funding to go forward and to develop this asset, and hopefully in 12 months we'll be giving you some fantastic news as where we're at. Importantly, we have 3 million tons combined resource approximately, and with both of them high-grade low impurities, and the value of each one of them is fantastic. The returns of each one of them is it shows a compelling story as why to get into Galan, why to get now where we at, and why it's important to remember what we've done all this time. We've been very conservative in our approach, but we always use the best companies available. As a testimony of that, we're using Hatch now that is doing our DFS, and we expect to have that finalized within the next 12 months. So there's a lot of things happening here in Argentina and doing a lot of work, and it has been a fantastic experience to be back again after almost 2.5 years of not being to site. So anyway, where are we? We are in the South American lithium triangle. We have big names as Elephant Country. We have the Livent Corporation that's been operating for 28 years producing lithium carbonate. We have POSCO, which is an industrial company that became a miner now. Interesting why Hombre Muerto, and I'll show you next. And then Galaxy with its has merged with Orocobre, that is all chem now. So why Hombre Muerto? And then again, you know, Hombre Muerto West is showing that it has the highest grade of brine in Argentina with the lowest level of impurities in terms of magnesium to lithium. If I show you the next slide, it combines the two impurities. So you want to be as low as possible, as close to zero as you can. This is part of our presentation. You can go and have a look at your own leisure, and happy to answer questions down the track. So importantly, in this cluster of companies, you can see Galaxy, Orocobre, which is all chem, by the way. So, and then you go Livent and you go POSCO, but we are here in one of the closest point to zero in terms of low impurities. And this is what I believe that POSCO, in the end, having all this information, decided to go for Hombre Muerto. And this is not a coincidence, and we are proving that we have something important. And why Brian, and why we doing what we're doing is because the conventional technology today is already proven technology that can show, that can prove the production of CO2 at the lowest level possible in the industry. So this is courtesy of SQM. We're doing our own ESG, and we should be able to come with some numbers down the track this year. Also important, our project requires low level of energy, and this is also showing that the energy required for processing is minimal, because brine or the lithium is already in a solution, so it's not energy input into all of this, and that is what makes a big difference. So the capital structure of the company, we have almost not far off 300 million shares on issue, with close to $60 million in cash. The board of management, as I mentioned, 17%. Top 20 is 50% of the company. Top 50 is 64% of the company. So we have a highly held and company with significant milestones to accomplish in terms of what we need to achieve to get our options, and this is keep us highly motivated to get to where we want to go. So here's a board. Some of them are the presentations. I believe that Terry and Chris are already there. Needless to say that Richard's been a very good chairman here. He's a mining lawyer by background, and he's been to Argentina, knows Argentina, worked already here. Myself and Daniel, he's been the person with the most experience in lithium, 28 years at SQM, and potentially the man that has sold to date the most lithium in the world for the last 10 years, when it was senior VP of commercial. And Raymond also has been with us since day one, since the company was private. So there's been a collective unity of and forces going forward to take Galan to where it's sitting today. So I'm really happy and proud of where the board has gone and taken me, and I've got a very good team also that has done things in Argentina in the way that we want to go, and as a reflection, this is how advanced we are. But a satellite picture, the Hombre Muerto West sit at the west of the Salt Flat, and Livent is here, the operations, and the Phoenix plant is here. POSCO is to the west, so to the east, to the north, and then you go and Galaxy, which is all chem, and south of that is Candelas. Hombre Muerto West, just to give us a reference, that's Patapila. So this is just in one of our tenements, we can fit all our ponds that could produce 20,000 tons of lithium carbonate equivalent. We will release an update in our study At $18,000, $18,500, we have a strong NPV of $2.2 billion. I'm still surprised how high the spot price is at $60,000, and which is great. But we're putting our head down and we're trying to develop our project the best we can, and we're doing several activities I will mention in a moment. At Candelas, this is the pond layout that is showing and on the east, and the NPV of that is the $1.2 billion. Good return on investment, and we are in an area that we know that we can improve and reduce our capex and opex. So where is Galan today in potentially in our cost curve for the year 2020? Or 2021, better said. We are in, as Ombra Morta West, at the right point, one of the lowest operating costs. Then we have the Candelas, which is sitting right in the middle. So as a combination of our both projects, we're already very competitive, and we believe that we can get potentially show something really good to the market. Importantly, the combination of 34,000 tons of LCE is not small, and we believe that we potentially could increase that to 40,000 tons of LCE production a year down the track, and this is our main goal. We have an exploration upside that we believe that we can sort of compensate for that. So this is a comparison table that you can go at your own leisure to compare where Galan sits. But the main point that I'm going to make is on Ombra Morta West versus Lithium Americas, which is the largest operating, the largest project today in Argentina, 40,000 tons of LCE. Our OPEX is still relatively more competitive than them. The CAPEX, we know that we can improve and make it more efficient. But this is what high grade and low impurities gives you. It gives you a head start in terms of cost. And this is what we're moving very quickly into Ombra Morta West. So we learned that we can reduce our OPEX, we can reduce our CAPEX, we can increase our production rate potentially, and we can compensate all of this because we haven't explored all the areas. There's an exploration upside. We are doing further geophysical work at the whole of Ombra Morta West, and we're digesting some of this information for the time being. And then at Casa del Inca, we just bought a new tenement, so we know that we are very likely to increase our estimate. So anyway, in terms of the next steps, what we've done with our brine, we've taken our brine and proven that we can get our brine into concentration of 6% lithium metal, and that equates to around 32% LCE. This potentially could be a product itself, and we're exploring that avenue, and we'll inform the market in due course. And but importantly, we have taken also our brine, concentrate brine, and take it into the lab and produce lithium carbonate battery grade of high purity. And so there are a lot of learnings been happening through the last year that has given us the footprint at all levels to take Ombra Morta West today into a DFS that Hatch is currently performing. Now, on a local note, we are at the Greenbushes South exploring early days, but this is very interesting because there's a fault that runs from that controls the mineralization at Greenbushes into the southern end. So what we've done, we've taken data from a CSRO that was taken in the 70s and 80s. We are doing our own, we have done our own sampling, and we're waiting for results. So we're informing the market in due course as well. But this is something that is very exciting. Having said that, our focus remains in Argentina, and this is something nice to have. So in terms of what have we done, this is we gone in Candelas, we're getting the drilling permits. We like to go and drill Candelas in next quarter or quarter 3, and this is work in progress. And then update the resource in terms of how we like to move for both projects, our resource from indicated to measured. And now when we look at Ombra Morta West, this is our main focus today. We keep drilling, we've done geophysics, we digest more data. We still have these 2 different campaigns of geophysics that we're currently running. And we like to update the market as soon as we finish. And so we put in diamond drillings, we've done bore wells. We like to bring a diamond drilling that hopefully it'll be there next week. And we may even bring a 3rd rig to completely accelerate this. So this is a lot of things happening in the meantime. So we commencing our feasibility studies mentioned by Hatch, and by the end of this quarter, or no later the next quarter next year, we should have this study completely performed. And then after, we'll be looking hopefully to have the permits to production ready, and then funding to develop the project. So fingers crossed, next year we could be in exciting times and give you a really good, interesting update. So pictures from my side to here in Argentina. We have a new camp, Hombre Muerto West. COVID is something that we are keeping an eye on, so we're constantly testing our crew. We have a fantastic team that has been developing this very quickly. And also importantly, I would like to highlight that we have 2 camp coordinators from the village of Antofagasta de la Sierra. And so we're trying to hire people that and train them to give them a bit more of a responsibility, not just cleaners or people with low level of skills. So we're training people directly from the local community to give us, and also the two ladies are doing that. And here's one of them, which is Dina in the picture. So what the site looks like, and today we have Hombre Muerto West. This is Patapila. This is the first drill hole. We already put the platforms where we want to drill next. We're drilling at Rana de Sal, and we have our meteorological station. This is the rig number for well number 2. This is with my geology manager, and the relationships locally remain strong in Argentina. So we're moving fast. We have a really good location. Exploration upside remains there. We are not reinventing the wheel. We have a good model there, and we have a good job that we want to increase. We have 2 studies. We're moving very fast in our DFS study. We also are actively employing local people. 70% of our local force is from the province of Catamarca, by the way. So we have a very strong flavor locally. And we have the green bushes. So with all of that, I'll leave you that now just with an image of what is looking at drill hole number 2 in the area. And you can see how close we are to the salt flat. And it shows you that the salt flat penetrates all the way to where the rig is and far beyond back. And with that, I would like to say thank you very much for your time. I really hope next year I could give you an update. And well, this is fantastic to be presenting, and I look forward to seeing you all in Perth. Thank you.
Nobody twigged, did they? Okay, Paul Payne is a geologist with 35 years of experience within the mining industry, including over 15 years of independent consulting across a range of commodities and jurisdictions. He has extensive technical experience in the evaluation of mineral deposits, from early stage exploration to definitive feasibility studies. After recently reducing his consulting commitments, Paul is now devoting more of his time to running his cattle farm in the southwest. Paul, welcome along.
Well, good afternoon. Well, is it afternoon yet? I think I'm a bit early. Thank you for attending the first ever presentation of the Carnaby Resources story. And it's great to be presenting on the back of some excellent results, the discovery of 2 high-grade copper-gold projects in Queensland. Well, yeah, you've called, I think Carnavale was supposed to be on. Yeah, let's go with that one.
So what we're doing is we're switching players, is that right?
If that's easier than switching. Yep.
I have Carnavale down here in my script and my notes. You're ready to rock and roll? You are Humphrey Hale?
Thank you for attending.
Humphrey, up you get. Carnavale is a multi-commodity explorer of gold and base metals in Western Australia. Chief Executive Officer is Humphrey Hale. He joins us with the story. Welcome, Humphrey.
Thank you, Jerry. We'll crack on. Cautionary statement. I'm going to say all those usual words that everybody's heard for 3 days. Sorry about that. It'll be high grade, it'll be open at depth, and all the angles. It'll be tier one, a great board, lots of money. So let me show you why. This slide is out of date. We completed a capital raising at the beginning of the week and have just raised $2.64 million, which goes on top of the $2 million in the bank already as of December. That was done at 1.1 cents, and we have a number of options that will come up to expire in July, which could add another $2 million into the treasury of Carnavale, which gives us about $5 or $6 million to progress our projects. And you can see a nice jump up in the share price as a result of our drilling at Kukani, and I'll go through that shortly. So we have a current market cap of around $30 million, and we shall move forward. You need three things to be successful in exploration. You need money, so we've got plenty of that. You need good people. We've got a small board and myself as CEO with a great track record. Andy Beckwith and I work together at Anglo Gold, and we have a secret skunk works that does a lot of the geology behind the scenes and helps us with some of the geochemistry and structural interpretations, as well as a great field team. So I must give a shout out to the boys and girls who are out in the bush at the moment drilling our project at Orabanda with the Air Corps as of Monday. So they're very busy. We've got 3 projects in WA. It's a good place to be at the moment with COVID, and we're in some pretty famous jurisdictions. We've got gold at Kukani, we've got gold at Orabanda, and we've got a nickel project at Grey Dam, very close to Ardea's project at Emu Lake on similar geology. So I'll focus in on Kukani, and we've heard a number of people talk about Kukani recently. High profile Genesis with their Ulysses project, and a big shout out to Mike Fowler and his team for pulling together the big project. Oh, excuse me. In this area here, our tenements down here are 10 k's away from this Ulysses project, as well as out here, not on the map, we have the Apollo project with Saturn. And that brings in to the region something in the order of 2.5 million ounces of undeveloped gold. We sit here in the middle. We also have our neighbours Metallicity and Nex, who are developing some of the older high-grade historic mines at Cosmopolitan, Leopold and McTavish. So our exploration has been a layered process. We started off with a view that we were going to come into this central area in amongst all of these previous explorers and look for high-grade gold undercover. And high-grade in this instance is ounce dirt, 15 grams, 30 grams, that sort of number, and those elements have been found at Cosmopolitan, historically mined at 360,000 ounces at around 30 grams. So we are targeting a similar style of resource here at Kukani. We did 3 rounds of air core and targeted, in the main, these structural zones and splays. We had some success and followed it up with RC, but you can see these grey areas here were pretty dead, and this is the area where we hit the high grade. So I'll zoom straight into that. So air core, we had substantial hits in the 3rd round of air core. So 2 at 16, 4 at 30, 2 at 32, and we defined an area that is about about 500 metres long here, and a high-grade zone in the middle of 250 metres. Cutting a section through this with the RC, drilling on the plan here, we had an exceptional hit at 16 metres at 21, and above and up dip 2 metres at 16, a further 4 metres at 31, and the whole down dip section here is about 200 metres. So a substantial discovery undercover at Kukani. It's important to note in this image here that this transported area to the east is down dip. And as we move forward, I'll show you that that becomes important. There's two levels of transported material. There's a thick layer of depleted zone in the saprolite, and it's taken us a while to unpick it. But as a result of that knowledge, we've been able to put together a fairly impressive discovery here at Kukani. In this 250-metre square, we've got about 200 metres from here to here of high grade and along 5 sections. So if you look at the potential gold in this 250-metre box, if you do 250 metres and do the maths, you could find a comfortable 300,000 ounces within that box. And then if we think about some of the transactions that have happened around the industry, at 250,000 ounces, 350,000 ounces at 15 grams, that could be $650 an ounce or $200 million. So an incredibly valuable asset. And if we add that to the long section, you can see that we have our Champion South project on the tenement. There's another transported zone which indicates potential for a new one of these in this area here and potentially here. And this area is now much better understood with the RC and the air core that we've been drilling recently. So we have an RC rig booked to come back and drill in this area immediately. We finish at Orabanda, so that's in March, and an air core rig to come and test this zone as well. So we're aggressively developing this. We have the funds to do it, and we're very hopeful to grow this spectacular new discovery at Kukani. So our second project, Orabanda, this is another pretty new style in the Orabanda district. Our thesis here is to look for an invincible style deposit in sedimentary basins. The zone is 15 kilometres long and contains the Carnage Shear, which separates the grey flag, the black flag groups from the Coralline conglomerates. And we've done soil sampling, we've reviewed the historic data, and that gave us the confidence that the Carnage Shear was fertile for gold in these sedimentary basins. So Invincible is our model. Invincible was discovered in 2012. It's over 2.5 million ounces at plus 4 grams and provides goldfields with most of its production at St Ives. So this is a project of a different scale to Kukani. It's a much larger opportunity, and we've come in here with our first round of air core as of last year and had some pretty good results, such as 4 metres at 8.8, 8 metres at 2 3/4, including 4 metres at 5, 12 metres at 0.44, and many other substantial hits. But I think the important thing to note is the scale of the wide-spaced air core that we did on this project. So this zone here is about 6 or 7 kilometres long, and this anomaly is about 500 metres wide, which is the same as the strike length at Kukani. The hole centres are 80 metres apart, and the lines are 360 metres apart, or a kilometre apart. And so we've been able to define a 6 or 7 kilometre long geochem anomaly with high-grade hits as high as nearly 9 grams, 4 metres at 9 grams. So we started drilling here back on Monday, and we have about 3 or 4 weeks to go with an 11,000 metre program, infilling the zones here and through here and a further bit down here. The central portion here is owned by Prospectivity, and there's surface workings and shafts in that zone. To give you an idea as to what this might look like in section, This is the 500 metres, and we've got these anomalies in the sap rock at the base of the drilling. Again, the cover is very quiet, the saprolite's very quiet, and it requires detailed unpicking and to get the maximum out of the opportunity. And so down at Highlander, this one's 250 metres, and again, some strong intercepts there with 4 metres at nearly 9 grams. So that's our gold projects. Now on to the Grey Dam nickel project. And we heard Ardea speak about the Emu Lake. Well, Emu Lake's up the road from us, and on the same geology. They've demonstrated nickel sulfides, and they've shown us already today some of the detail of their work. Our project is down here, and we've identified 5 nickel sulfide potential opportunities within the same package. We've done ultra-fine fraction soils that's identified the soil anomalies. We've gone over this with passive seismic to determine the depth of cover, and that seems to be not more than 30 metres or so, so we'd be straight in with Grand EM to identify targets for drilling pretty soon. So these are the soil anomalies identified by the ultrafine fraction soils, and it's an area under cover. We tested this zone here, which is the other ultramafic zone, and this is a nickel cobalt laterite resource, very similar to the Goongarrie project. As far as timing is concerned, we're drilling at Ora Banda currently with an 11,000 metre program. We'll be straight into the RC at Kukani, and then further aircore at Kukani on that longer trend, and EM at Grey Dam. Thank you very much for the opportunity. See us at booth 94 next to the coffee machine. Thank you, Jerry.
Thank you, Humphrey. 12:30, almost lunchtime. Encounter Resources is advancing a portfolio of major copper projects in WA and NT, which includes project partnerships with BHP and IGO. Encounter Resources MD is Will Robinson, and he joins us now. Welcome along, Will.
Thanks, Jerry, and thanks to the audience today and those that are tuning in via the live stream. As Jerry said, Encounter Resources is a project generator and exploration company with a focus here in Western Australia and the Northern Territory. We believe that we can get the most exploration value for our dollar by partnering and collaborating with other companies, and we've done that on a number of occasions in recent years. That enables us to go into new areas, to chase bigger targets and to new frontiers to try to find major new large-scale copper deposits. We are very much focused on copper, and that's been, I guess, the metal that we think most of the major mining companies want in their portfolio more than any other at this point in time. We've got a terrific number of partnerships, and we've been very quick to move on new data to establish a very large project portfolio in the Northern Territory covering over 30,000 square kilometres and a large portfolio in the West Arunta and the Patterson Province in Western Australia. So last year was a big year for Encounter. We had a huge expansion in our project portfolio in the Northern Territory following the identification of copper in a number of drill holes and also at surface in a number of locations. We had high-grade copper drilled in the Patterson towards the back end of the last year, and also some really interesting IOCG type alteration at the very first drill hole at our Aileron project. We did a partnership agreement with BHP in May last year, bringing them into our Elliott project in the Northern Territory, and I'll talk a little bit about that. And in October, November, towards the end of the year, We separated our gold business in the Tanami. We got a very large position there, which was in joint venture with Newcrest. We got the project back. We demerged that, and there was a $10 million IPO. And they've assembled a terrific team with Peter Buick, Justin Osborne and Clayton Davies. Between them, about 75 years worth of experience exploring in one of Australia's most prospective gold belts. So if you haven't heard about the Hamlin Gold story, I suggest you follow it up. This is a summary of the project portfolio in those three regions that I've talked about: the Patterson Province, the West Arunta in Western Australia, and in the Northern Territory. I'll start with, I guess, a summary as to why we're in copper. Now, there's been a lot of people talking about a number of the minerals. From my perspective, there was a paper written by John Wronski, one of our directors, back in 2009, talking about the requirement for a renaissance in greenfields exploration. And it sat there talking about how the industry is doing a lot of brownfields exploration. We're not finding new provinces, and the demand continues to grow, and we're going to reach a pinch point. And that's exactly where we are today in a lot of these commodities, not just copper. And I think that's why we're seeing an underinvestment in new province exploration over a period of probably 25 years, and now the industry's playing catch up. So this is the company. Paul Chapman's the chairman. He's been very successful in a number of companies over the last 20 years. Peter Buick and Dr. John Wronski sit on the board, driving our small dedicated technical team. Philip Crutchfield's a QC out of Melbourne with expertise in commercial transactions, and he's very handy to have on a board when we've got a number of partners that are a bit bigger than us. We've got a sound cash position, and we've got a big year coming up. So let me just start in the Patterson Province. Now, we first secured our position in the Patterson Province back in 2008 on the basis that this was one of the frontier areas of Western Australia that had been underexplored. Today I'll talk a little bit about our Lamel project, which is located about 25 kilometres northwest of Telfer, where we've been working up a project over the last few years. And 2021 and the diamond drill program that we completed in September, October last year was really important. We defined an extensive blanket of supergene copper gold at the June prospect there, over a kilometre long. We did the first systematic diamond drilling, and 3 holes hit what we believe is the prospective package in that diamond drill program. We were following up an RC hole, which was 132 metres at 0.3 gold and 0.1 copper, which was a really nice start, and drilled a hole underneath that, and we drilled 1.5 metres at 19% copper at depth. We stepped 200 metres away, which is on the basis of our heritage line clearance, and drilled another hole, and we hit multiple narrow, high-grade copper gold reefs over a rock package over 200 metres thick. We think these are exactly the sort of intersections you're going to see quite proximal to a Winu or a Javieron. And we're looking forward to getting out there early in the season this year. And let me just run you through a section through those 3 drill holes, just to give you a bit of indication of what we were talking about. You can see we're obviously pretty excited when we started to see some of this drill core. We think we're very close to the core of what's going on here at June. We're doing a gravity survey in the coming weeks or before the end of March. And we'll be planning to drill there on the basis of that. So that'll be our first drilling in 2022, and it's shaping up as an exciting place to find a potential new addition to the discoveries in the Patterson. We're also working together with one of our partners, IGO. They're doing some terrific work, really testing a number of new ideas, new technologies in the Patterson Province. And we're working together with them. They're pulling together their targets at the moment, and we'll look forward to informing people as the drilling commences in 2022. Now, the Northern Territory we call Australia's next hotspot for copper. It already is one of the hottest spots for copper in Australia and base metals. And this has really come about by what was a very important investment by the Federal Australian Government and the Northern Territory Geological Survey where they targeted this area between Mount Isa and Tennant Creek, two major mineral fields, and in between, in that sort of greater MacArthur Basin area, there has not been a lot of additional exploration. They provided extensive new data sets across this region, which have attracted an enormous amount of attention from juniors and majors alike, including BHP, Rios, Oz Minerals and Teck. This area is largely pegged now. There was hardly a tenement in this region before that exercise started. We were one of the early movers into this region, and the Elliott project was the first project that we picked up. Now, this was the project. This was a hydrogeochem anomaly. One of the things they did, this is obviously some of Australia's best cattle country. Every 5 to 10 kilometres there's a station bore. They went and sampled the water in these station bores and did what they call a hydrogeochemical survey across the Northern Territory. 18 of the top 20 samples clustered at Elliott, right at a key structural intersection at the southwest margin of the Beetaloo Basin. We looked at this, we looked at other data as well. We saw there was some surface geochem indicating there was copper in the region. We took this project to BHP and we did a $25 million earn-in deal, and this is they're pursuing that project. Now, this is a sort of place where we're not looking for one deposit. Where this is a 50-kilometre long copper anomaly in that data set, we're looking to find a new belt of copper deposits, and that's kicking off this year with the on-ground exploration. BHP is planning diamond drilling and seismic surveys, and we'll be very interested to see how they go. There's a lot of really neat things you can do when you're going into a new region like this, and this is one of the things. When they drilled those water bores, they kept little vials of the samples, about every 3 metres worth. We've been systematically going through that over the last 2.5 years with a handheld XRF and along some key structural corridors, and that's added a number of projects and enlarged existing projects that we've got in the Northern Territory, giving ourselves an internal proprietary data set in the Northern Territory, which is giving us a bit of a head start in a few areas. One of those areas is Jessica, and this was a region where one of those water bores had some chips, which you can see there in the top left of the image there, which had 3 metres at 1.5% copper in an untargeted water bore from just below the surface. We extended that project along the corridor to the northwest, where we were seeing additional support in the water bore sampling. And really over the last 18 months, this has been a really hot area in Northern Territory, I should say, where people have been finding copper at surface. The National Drilling Initiative through the MinEx CRC drilled copper in their stratigraphic holes. And further out to the east, as part of that Exploring for the Future program, the government drilled a 1.7 kilometre deep hole at Carrara to demonstrate that the same geology that's hosting Century and Mount Isa is coming back to surface in the Northern Territory on the margin of the other side of the Carrara Basin. Now, we've got a very large land position there, and interestingly, that untargeted stratigraphic hole once again had some copper sulfides, but had significant zinc sulfides in that core, more than's been logged so far, and we've had a look at that core. Moving to the south, just on, another project which is going to see a lot of activity in 2022 for us is our Sandover Copper Project. This is an area 170 kilometres northeast of Alice Springs. Historically, there's been some copper mapped at surface, a stratigraphic horizon that had copper associated with it. We secured the project. The horizon was mapped over 20 kilometres. We went to an area about 6 kilometres, those 4 areas. We went and sampled. We got up to 20% copper at surface. It's a Neoproterozoic sub-basin at the southern margin of the Georgina. It looks as closer analogy to the Zambian copper belt as we've seen. We're working with a number of experts in that field. And these are the sort of things we were finding. If you look at those 2 areas, Area 1 and Area 2, there's some aerial photos of the sort of horizon that we were sampling out there, and an image of the sort of float that we're seeing at surface. So this is classic Zambian copper belt setting. It's very early days. We've mapped this, obviously it's been mapped historically over a large area. We think it extends further outside of that based on some geophysical reviews we've done, and you'll be hearing a lot more about Sandover as we can get across the Great Divide. I'll just quickly finish in the West Arunta. Now this is a project and a district that we're seeing a lot of activity for copper and also more recently rare earths. This is an IOCG potential. There's been one hole drilled in that entire package. It was 158 metres deep. It failed with a mechanical issue on a drill rig. It intersected some really interesting IOCG type signatures with gold, copper and rare earths. We completed a gravity survey in November last year in that magenta box, and you can see the outcome there is we've identified some really interesting coincident magnetic gravity anomalies in the nearby. But also while we're out there, and the team had a helicopter in the area, we went and trialled a few surface sampling techniques, and we took, I think it was a handful of samples just to see where there's a bit of residual geology coming through the sand out there. They sampled up to 0.5% rare earths. Now we've got two sample points there, one down here where we sampled off the deck and the drill hole itself, both having more than 0.5% rare earths in them. I think that's telling us that this area is quite alive from a rare earth perspective, and we're looking at this both from a pathfinder towards IOCG mineralisation, but also as a standalone opportunity. So things that are coming up. The first on-ground activity this year is going to be at Lamel in the Patterson Province, where we've got a gravity survey followed by diamond drilling. We're keen to do more surface sampling now that we've proven that these techniques can work at Aileron. Sandover and Jessica, we've just talked about. Jessica and Carrara, we've got a gravity survey in conjunction with the Northern Territory Geological Survey that's going to finish off in the first part of this year. BHP is going to kick off their exploration at Elliott. And IGO's got a lot of work planned in the Patterson Province, and we're ongoing. We look at all of our projects at various gating points. We make decisions as to whether to partner or do it 100%. So we think we've got the foundations established for what's going to be a major exploration push in Central Australia, and we're well positioned in 3 of the main districts that we think are going to deliver success. We've got market dynamics in copper that have never been better. We think there's sedimentary copper deposits can produce high-grade deposit styles, and that's why the major mining companies, and a lot of them, are shifting a lot of their resources towards looking for that style of copper. We think Central Australia is a great place to be looking for it. We're maximising our exploration dollar through partnering with major mining companies, which gives you this evidence of the sort of scale that we're chasing here, and that's why we're attracting these partners on board. And we think we have exceptional leverage for our shareholders to benefit for what's going to be, I think, a very exciting 5 to 10 years for copper in Australia. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Will. Earlier, I suffered from a case of premature anticipation in introducing Paul Payne, a geologist, 35 years experience within the mining industry, and is now devoting more of his time to running his cattle farm in the southwest. He hasn't specified what breed of cattle or whereabouts. Maybe he might tell us that as we welcome him back. What are you breeding?
We're breeding Angus cattle on a small farm just north of Coarum not far from Margaret River.
Beautiful.
Very nice place to be. Well, welcome to part 2 of the Carnaby presentation. In part 2, we'll cover a bit more about what the company's been doing. As I mentioned, it's actually the first ever conference presentation by Carnaby Resources. The company listed 5 years ago, hasn't had a lot of the success until recently, and it's good to be presenting this on the strength of us making a couple of pretty major copper gold discoveries in Queensland. We've had a fair bit of press with our Greater Duchess Copper Project, where just before Christmas we announced a major copper gold discovery at the Nil Desperandum prospect, where we intersected 41 metres at 4.1% copper. This was soon after we announced results from what we see as almost almost as good a project, 3 kilometres north at Lady Fanny, where we intersected 27 metres at 2.8, 40 metres at 1. The 40 metres at 1 was from surface. This is showing strong zones over 400 metre strike length coming to surface. And the results, together with the other work we're doing, have been showing an emerging IOCG corridor over 5 kilometres in length. I should say before, this discovery is really credited to Rob Watkins, our Managing Director. Rob put the ground together and has run the exploration from day one. Rob should be doing the presentation today, but unfortunately couldn't make it here. The company overview is shown there. At a share price of $1.65 as it was a couple of days ago, we've got a market cap of nearly $240 million. Tightly held with 143 million shares on issue, and of those the directors hold 14%. Now, the board includes the team behind 2 other mining success stories. Rob, Peter and Greg put together Bedell Resources, took it from an IPO to a peak value of $800 million at one point. They were also behind Agincourt Resources, which they developed and took through to a takeover by Oxyana for $450 million. So we've got a solid team, we've got cash. We took the opportunity to raise $20 million on the basis of the higher share price. So we're well funded for work for the foreseeable future. The projects we've got, the main focus currently is the Greater Duchess project in Queensland in the Mount Isa region. It was considered brownfields. There are historic workings in the area. We've also been active in the Pilbara region. We put together a gold portfolio along strike from De Grey's Hemi project, and we had good results there over the year, but the focus is currently on the copper. I've also got an early stage project at Malmac, which is a craton margin copper, well, it's copper nickel gold project really. Very early stage, but the initial work there has been very positive. Greater Duchess is in the Mount Isa region, really well located. We're 70 kilometres from Mount Isa. We're 100 kilometres southwest of Cloncurry. The infrastructure in the area is great, sealed road access, the railways. There's a number of similar IOCG deposits in the region. Ernest Henry, Osborne, Eloise, the most well known. And we're in the fortunate position of being within trucking distance of multiple processing plants if that's required. We think the potential is here. We've demonstrated potential for a standalone project, and I think that's reflected, the market recognises that and reflected in our current market cap. So the Carnaby tenements are centred around the historic Duchess copper district. Amongst those is the Duchess copper mine, which was mined from 1900 to 1940, produced 2,500 tonnes of copper metal at a grade of 12%. South at the southern end of the tenements is included in the tenements is the Tick Hill mine, which is a historic mine operated by MIM in the 90s. It was also spectacularly high grade, one of the highest grade gold mines in the country, produced 500,000 ounces at a head grade of 22 grams. So it's a well endowed belt with extensive areas of IOCG signature mineralisation. The alteration and mineralisation style is typical and similar to what's seen in the Cloncurry region. At Nil Desperanum itself, there's been a lot of work over the years. There is some shallow historic workings in the area, and various other companies have had a crack at drilling it since about 2006. The work has been focused in the up plunge area beneath the old workings, and our drilling throughout 2021 similarly was in the shallow areas, and we were intersecting some pretty substantial mineralisation. A couple of the results there, 87 metres at 0.9, 60 metres at 1%. So it showed a very big system close to surface, but it was really hard to get the geometry of it. And you can see this northwest trend here is what was originally focused on for most of the work, the historic workings with that orientation. And the IP work, the geophysical work that was done, was all orthogonal to that trend. So it wasn't until we put together the drilling results from this year, understood that there's a really distinct, strong southwest plunge to the system, realised that the IP surveys wouldn't have picked that up. So towards the end of last year, we did one trial IP line across here to see how it would light up, and it lit up a fantastic IP anomaly. So 80 metres down plunge of any previous drilling. So we drilled the centre of the anomaly and got our 41 metres at 4.1. So above that point, we've got 500 metres of plunge from that point up to surface. Thickness typically 40 to 60 metres. Sorry, I'll just go back one slide. So we followed that up with another 6 lines of IP to the south, or to the southwest. Each of those has got this distinct, strong IP chargeability anomaly. So we're confident that the plunge continues for at least a further 400 metres down plunge. We did conduct some drilling. You can see east and west of the discovery hole. The hole to the east has hit strong copper sulfide mineralisation over 50 metres. These holes are around 25 metres apart. The hole to the west got copper sulfide mineralisation, not as strong, but shows the system continues. Now, we were held up from drilling further down plunge of this because we didn't have heritage agreements in place. But we announced this morning that we've got the heritage agreements, so we'll be out clearing pads, getting access ready, and hopefully starting the extensional drilling next week. Just to show you the sort of results we were getting up plunge from hole 44. 61 metres at 0.6, 52 at 0.7, 50 at 1.1, 52 at 1. Really thick, high grade, clearly open pittable type intersections, so with substantial copper metal. The other discovery we made was the Lady Fanny prospect. Now this has been known about for some time, there's historic workings there, but there's never been any modern exploration over it. And the reason for that is this was a designated historic mining lease within our exploration licence, and it was excised from the area. So there'd been no work on it. It had no ownership assigned to it, so we applied last year to have it relinquished, and only late last year it lapsed, so the ground is now within our exploration licence. So there was no other targeting system there, so we went and drilled beneath the existing shallow workings and returned intersections like 27 metres at 2.8, 40 metres at 1 from surface on wide-spaced RC drilling. So that's shaping up as another fantastic deposit, clearly open pittable and clearly some scale. Also this morning we announced IP results from Lady Fanny. The survey was done last week. We completed 6 lines across it and have received interpreted results for 3 of those lines. And the southernmost line shows the scale's a bit deceptive here. That's a much stronger, bigger anomaly than we had at the high-grade hit at Nil Desperandum. So we're confident this is showing extensive copper sulfide mineralisation lighting up in the IP. So we've got rigs out there at the moment, so we'll soon have news flow from there. You can see other sections there, the geometry and size and the shallowness of the intersections we had at Lady Fanny. So we've currently got mineralisation defined over 200 metres, the workings extend over 400, so we're expecting to just carry on drilling that out and defining that 400 metres of strike. Elsewhere on the deposit, there's numerous workings, the most substantial of which is Duchess, which produced 205,000 tonnes of copper. It doesn't have any holes underneath it, and you'll see down on the bottom, bottom left, an IP profile through there showing distinct bullseyes below the workings. The workings there extend to about 260 metres depth, So it is a very deep target, but at 12% copper, we think it's a viable target. There's also number of parallel systems out there which have been drilled by various operators. Prior to getting active in Queensland, we put together a package of tenements in the Pilbara. A lot of this was, some of it was vacant ground, some of it was farm-ins to lithium projects. The tenements are along strike from Hemi's discovery. The main structures that controlling the De Grey structural control and intrusion systems are run through our property. And we acquired the projects looking for intrusion-hosted gold. The whole area is blanketed by transported cover, the same as the De Grey system. So we drilled it with wide-spaced air core to start with, looking for basically trying to get bedrock geochem. We got some anomalies, followed it up with some RC drilling, and confirmed that we did have intrusion-hosted gold mineralisation. So the concept was proven. We've still got very wide-spaced drilling, still got work to do there. The program was finished in November. We're still waiting on many of the results from that program. Now, no portfolio is complete at the moment without a lithium anomaly. So as part of our work out at Strelly, we did there's very few areas amenable to soil sampling, but one of them is a big hill on the western part of our tenement. We did soil sampling looking for gold. We found 2 parallel gold soil anomalies, but amongst it we found a 1.5 K by 500 metre lithium anomaly with results up to 179 ppm. Mapping through there did show pegmatite, so that's work in progress to go back there, properly map it and prepare a program for next year, or for later this year. Malmac is our third project. It's very early stages. We've had a couple of trips out there doing some soil geochem. It's a big project. Access is difficult. It's a big job to get there. So we started with geochem. We've got a 6 kilometre long low-level copper nickel anomaly. The attraction here was the stratigraphy we think it's equivalent to the Narracudas, which host Sandfire's DeGrussa project. It's also equivalent to where Rumble's working down in the south of the basin. Okay. Naturally, the activity from now on, or for the foreseeable future, is focusing on the follow-up at Greater Duchess. We've had 2 rigs working there for the last couple of weeks on what we intend to do is 20,000 metres of drilling. We've got a multi-purpose rig and an RC rig currently at Lady Fanny. Now that the approvals are in place, we can get on with the extensional drilling at Nil Desperandum. The results of the success with the IP survey has really been a game changer out there. So we'll ramp up the IP surveys for across the project area and start comprehensively testing that 5 Ks of the prospective belt. Pilbara, we're still waiting on RC results from last year, but we expect there'll be follow-up drilling plan there, and likewise at the lithium anomaly. So Carnaby's looking like a good investment story. The market certainly appreciates it. We've had exceptional results, made 2 major discoveries in Mount Isa. The location of our projects is excellent. There is no better place in the country to discover a copper deposit. We'll have strong news flow. We're well cashed up to accelerate our program, strong news flow over the coming months, and a strong board and management. This is a team that's discovered and built mines before with a strong record of success, and we think we're well on the way to doing it again. Thank you.
Andrew Fitzpatrick is currently Exploration Manager, Northern Australia Projects for IGO. He has over 20 years' experience in the application of geophysics for mineral and groundwater exploration, working across government, academia, applied research, and the private sector, as well as the mining sector. Andrew will be talking about IGO's belt-scale exploration portfolio, focusing on magnetic NICU coal and sedimentary copper systems in Australia. Welcome, Andrew.
Thanks, Jerry. And IGO has been a long-standing participant at RIU, winning the Craig Oliver Award in 2011, and congratulations to De Grey Mining to winning it this year. Today, I'll briefly provide an update on IGO's corporate strategy and performance, but then the main focus of today's presentation is IGO's all-important exploration discovery program. Standard disclaimer, probably the biggest disclaimer if you're listening to my bio. I used to be a geophysicist about 2 months ago, and now I'm an exploration manager, so take that any way you want, I guess. So it's been an exciting time for IGO in the last 18 months. We've gone through a significant transformation recently with the acquisition of 25% of the Greenbushes lithium mine and 49% of the Kwinana lithium hydroxide refinery. This coincided with our divestment of Tropicana to make us a truly 100% energy metals mining and exploration company. We've also transformed our culture, whereby we have a focus on attracting and retaining the best people and ensuring that their time into IGO is their highlight of their careers. Obviously, with increasing growth, we're giving them more opportunities on a daily basis. We've also transformed our ESG performance and reporting, and are proud that we have gained significant global recognition for what we are doing, including our inclusion in the S&P Global Sustainability Yearbook for the second year running, in which IGO is only just one of 19 mining companies to be admitted. We've also transformed our outlook through strategic M&A. We've built a portfolio of clean energy metal assets, which are set to deliver strong returns in the future. You can see our value to shareholders is going to be increasing over the next few years. So this transformation has been underpinned by our strategy, which is to be a globally relevant supplier of metals which are critical to clean energy. Further to this, we want to produce a diverse suite of products made ethically, safely, and sustainably. We have a strong customer focus through vertical integration into downstream processing, such as nickel sulfate and lithium hydroxide. And obviously with the 49% of the acquisition of the refinery at Kwinana, that's a demonstration of that. And then lastly, we want to be a carbon neutral company, and we're committed to a net zero target by 2035. So how are we doing things like that? We're basically at Nova. Zenith Energy's just incorporated a 10 megawatt hour battery storage at Nova to complement our expanded solar farm. Nova can now run on 100% renewable energy for 9 hours over the summer and spring months, which basically reduces our overall emissions by about 24%. So just recent corporate highlights in the last year is, obviously ensuring our people are safe and well engaged in our business during these tough COVID times. We've got operational excellence through strong production numbers and high commodity prices, delivering strong financial results. The expansion at Greenbushes and Kwinana is in line or better than expectations. And then in December, we announced our proposed acquisition of Western Areas. And so obviously with our clean energy growth, we're going to be providing good return to shareholders. So now I'd like to spend the rest of the presentation on my sort of focus on our exploration and discovery programs. So IGO remains committed to exploration as a key pillar for our growth strategy. With continuous budgets at a very high level, again, we're getting $65 million for this financial year, and this has been happening for the last 4 years. We've obviously secured a portfolio of belt-scale land holdings across Australia over known and also emerging greenfield nickel and copper terrains, predominantly in Western and Northern Australia. Together with a best-in-class team, access to the best science, and a $65 million budget commitment, we have all the ingredients to drive transformational value creation through discovery. So you can see we have a massive, extensive holdings. Obviously, our main focus is still the Fraser Range, where we have our Nova deposit. Everything in green is our nickel projects, and I'm going to be talking about basically the AFO and our Kimberley projects. More conceptual are the areas in Central Australia, and then those highlighted in blue are our copper projects. And again, I'll mainly be talking about Patterson, which is in our second year running, and then also Copper Coast, which is another new project. Although we primarily go for belt scale opportunities, we do look for other options, and this little project over here is an example of that, where we're JVing in with Impact Minerals over a known nickel gabbro in the area that we're just actively exploring as well. Let's move on to the Fraser Range, which hosts our Nova deposit. So we've had an outstanding commitment in the Albany Fraser over the last 5 years. It is great having a belt-wide scale project portfolio, but it's also difficult to explore that. We've systematically explored through using the use of airborne electromagnetics and air core programs across the entire belt. And to date, we've mapped about 600 mafic and ultramafic intrusions across that area. We then use our in-house mafic prospectivity indexes to then identify nova-like intrusions within that population, and that dwells down from 600 down to 150 intrusions we need to follow up. What we've found to date is there's no mineralisations across the AFO, and they're not restricted to a certain stratigraphic horizon, which basically means the whole belt is quite prospective for finding another magmatic nickel system. And obviously IGO is actively exploring to find the next one. Just sort of focusing around Nova, I sort of referred to this as our mega brownfields project. Obviously with the high valued asset of Nova, feeding anything into that is a main priority. And again, we're focusing on any intrusions around the area. We've pretty well hammered ground EM across this landscape, but we've also come up with methodologies to determine how effectively deep it sees, and in areas of deep conductive regolith cover, where we're getting interesting results from air core, we're now doing sort of more conceptual deep drilling to get through that cover, where we can now use downhole EM as a platform to identify hopefully a new deposit. One of these is called Chimera, and I'm about to talk about that one in detail. I guess the other thing is, while we're continuously testing targets and removing them from our project portfolio, we're also adding new targets in as we keep going and exploring across the belt. So Chimera here, this was identified from aeromagnetics, and then we did some air core across the area. And what you can see here is that anything with the red dots, anomalous geochem, numbers of 0.3% nickel, 0.1% copper is sort of fairly typical. Because we're getting even mixtures of nickel and copper, we know it's magmatic nickel, so we're in the right belt. And like I said, we've tested this area with ground EM, and we know it's ineffective in this particular area because it's underneath conductive cover. This blue line here was the first hole into this particular intrusion. Here's a sample of the rock here. We've hit Websterite. It's got blebby sulfides and disseminated sulfides throughout. Really exciting results. Subsequently, we've drilled a couple of more holes, with which the last hole intersected an off-hole downhole EM plate, which is still yet to be tested. So watch this space, and hopefully we'll have some success. The Fraser Range project provides a real test bed for new technologies. More recently, something hot off the press, I guess, is we've been working with CSIRO with passive seismic tomography. I heard someone mention passive seismic earlier to map regolith thickness. That's what most people are quite aware of. This is a different type of technology. It's using tomography rather than putting the geophones in the ground for about 10 minutes with traditional regolith mapping seismic. This one here, you leave the sensors in for 30 days and it can see down to about 2 kilometres. So we laid out a grid of 300 nodes across the area to assess this technology, with the main aim is, can it actually map these intrusions at considerable depth at a much cheaper price than conventional active seismic techniques. Now moving further north into the Kimberley project. Again, we've got a belt scale area up in the Kimberley. We've pegged both the east and west Kimberley, and despite being quite a known area of mineralisation with things like Savannah and so forth, and Merlin, the double magic deposit discovered by Buxton, the area is pretty well underexplored with modern techniques. So IGO took the opportunity to do some JVs, mainly in the west, and then took the opportunities to peg most of the east in our own outright. So what are we doing? We've done first pass high resolution aeromag to sort of start mapping intrusions in the area, and we have the benefit in this particular terrain that we can actually go out and see rocks on the ground, so we can easily upgrade or downgrade the geology based on our interpretations in the office. We also flew a large airborne EM survey in the western part a couple of years ago, and again, it just gives us an area to focus in the first preliminary part of the exploration process, considering we've only really just got boots on the ground in the last year. Complementing all that as well, we've been doing some sampling, XRF traversing, and then we also supplemented these sort of data sets with our proprietary De Beers database, where we have a sample inventory that includes about 6,000 stream samples and about the same sort of number of heavy mineral concentrates. And again, we're now using new technologies such as TEMA to reanalyze these really valuable samples to again help us prioritise where we should be exploring in this belt in the first pass. We've also just started commencing ground EM surveys, and as nice as the Kimberley is to go up and visit, it's quite hard to do EM in some of the terrain due to the topography. So I just want to focus on where the guys got to last year, just in the West Kimberley. This is what we call the Sentinel Project, and this forms part of our regional joint venture agreement with Buxton Resources. The reason I'm showing this project is because it contains the largest amount of outcropping ruins dolerite, which we know hosts the mineralisation up in the West Kimberley. And in 2021, it was our first area where we got in there and actually had about 27 targets that we identified in the off-season, and the guys could actually go out there and, like I said, upgrade or downgrade those prospects. Those that had anomalous geochemistry, we then started ground EM across those particular prospects to hopefully identify some direct targets for subsequent drilling this year. So just in that small window, it's very seasonal. All these prospects are the ones that we like and that we're going to continue with just in that small area. And so this is just like probably 5 or 10% of the whole Kimberley project. So if I zoom right in, this is the stuff that I get really excited about. The guys did some ground EM across an area, identified a number of plates. Unfortunately, most of them are low conductance, with the exception of this little purple one over, except for this purple one over here at the Skarloey prospect. And they mapped the intrusion perfectly with the mag, and these dots here are the geological traverses done with the XRF, so it's all been ground truth. And this little plate here that hasn't been drilled yet is 9,000 Siemens with roughly 200 by 150 metre geometry. So hopefully it'll be an exciting year up there once we get the drill rig up there. And this is how we're going to systematically explore the Kimberley. We'll just continue generating targets, follow up ground EM over areas that have anomalous surface geochem and rocks, and then move on. Changing tack from the nickel space, moving into the copper space, heading on into the Patterson, and Will mentioned the great relationship we have with Encounter for one of our JV partners there. And before I get into that, just a general thing from the technical team, that's sort of like, you know, we've got a few copper projects. We've got the Patterson. We've also got this thing called Copper Coast in South Australia, and then another project called Frontier in Greenland. But we're basically taking a mineral system approach, building up the data sets we need to get a geological understanding of these terrains before we go in and drill. So we're collecting a lot of geophysical and geochemical data, and then a lot of thinking time by the geologists to build 3D or 4D conceptual models of basin architecture and start generating drill targets. So in these areas, there's existing high-resolution airborne EM, magnetic and gravity, so we've done inversions of those types of data sets. We did start collecting ground MT, and this is really just to get a real deep understanding of the basin architecture at depth. A lot of the stuff we see in the airborne EM, we don't know where these conductors go at depth, so it's to build that basin-wide model. And then we're obviously trialling new soil geochemistry techniques as well, ultrafine fractions and so forth, to again identify anomalies beneath thick transported cover. Also using spectral analysis of historic drilling as well. Again, basically applying new technologies to existing drill core in an area that's been sort of forgotten about until recently. And as the project geologist says, basically it's the ingredients of making a cake with some icing on top. So again, we've got a large amount of tenure. Although we're building up a large amount of data sets, this does still include stratigraphic drilling. I've mentioned the Encounter JV, but we've also got JVs with Cyprium Metals and Antippa across the belt as well. And like I said, despite over 40 years of continuous exploration, it's sort of been largely forgotten in recent times and hasn't had modern exploration techniques applied over it. So IGO does believe, this is the area where you want to go to find a tier 1 sediment-hosted copper system under shallow cover. So like I said, in the last year, we were just really building up the data set inventory. A lot of geophysics is going on. We're about to fly an airborne MT survey across the area to supplement multiple ground MT transects we've collected over the last couple of years across the belt. We're also collecting, like I said, a lot of soils and so forth, doing ultrafine fractions and doing principal component analysis out of that to generate some targets for follow-up drilling. And then lastly, the Copper Coast project. This is basically a project at its infancy, but again, applying the same techniques across here. This is a conceptual, a model-driven target area that IGO identified, and we think it's similar to what you'd see in the Central Africa copper belt, things like Kamoa and so forth. Again, there's been some great historic showings in this area, but again, no one's explored there in the last 30 years. So recently we've just collected some additional MT and ground gravity, and again, we've just finished flying an airborne MT in this area as well. So just lastly, in that context, this is the data set. If you go to the GSSSA right now and pull down the data set, you're going to get an image like this, and just with our infilling, even at regional scale, we're coming up with new pictures, identifying structures and subbasins that weren't apparent previously. Areas considered too deep to explore have actually got bedrock almost near surface. So none of this would be possible without our people. We believe we've built a great technical and operational team across all these different areas, targeting both nickel and copper systems. And our exploration strategy is aligned to clean energy metals, including nickel, copper, cobalt, and lithium. And then obviously we're getting great financial support through our strong budgets. So we have a strong commitment to exploration, and hopefully we'll have that discovery that will give us that transformational growth we're looking for. Thank you.
Lunch is next. We are back at 2 p.m. for the final session of this conference.